close your eyes and inhale deeply. A faint, sweet hint of vanilla lingers, and the shelves of rich mahogany lined with antique books that go all the way to the ceiling drift and wrap their papery, antique scent around you and melt into your clothes. The polished oak furniture releases a rich warmth that holds you gently, and the sweet fumes of anise and fennel curl into you like spectral ribbons. In the dim candlelight, a small glass chalice glints a vibrant chartreuse green on the altar. La Fille Verte, the green fairy herself, beckons you. Lifting an ornate slotted spoon, topped with a sugar cube, over the glass, you push your glass forward so that ice-cold water slowly drip, drip, drips from the intricate glass fountain and onto the sugar cube. Each drop a heartbeat, dissolving sugar into the potion before you. The liquid swirls and turns a milky opal hue as if by alchemy, a ritual unveiling hidden spirits. The warmth of the room grows, and a tangible energy, full of possibility, snakes through the air. You swear you can feel her there with you, a delicate whisper at your ear, a flicker at the corner of your vision. This moment, the green hour, the veil thins, and the ethereal muse dances through the shadows as she makes her way right to you. Welcome, my dear listener, to Wishcrafting. Come on in and sit for a spell as we explore the intoxicating magic and folklore of Absinthe, the infamous muse, the green fairy. Absinthe's power begins, like many things do, with plants. Absinthe itself is a trinity of herbs with one foot in the mundane and one in the mystical, and at its heart is wormwood, Artemisia absinthium, the very soul of the spirit and the source of its name. In episode 27, I talked at length about wormwood's cousin, mugwort, or Artemisia vulgaris. There are many different varieties of Artemisia, and the ones commonly used in herbalism, witchcraft, and ornamental landscaping are very commonly referred to as mugwort. The variety that we are exploring today, Artemisia absinthium, is very nearly exclusively referred to as wormwood. And that's nearly because this is the variety that's used in traditional absinthe and other tonic recipes of the time. And at the time that absinthe rose into popularity, wormwood was Artemisia absinthium's common name. But nowadays, the internet can make it a bit confusing. So, for clarity, we're just going to be referring to a specific variety, Artemisia absinthium, as wormwood today, and probably every day on the show. And we're going to leave the common name of mugwort to all of its other beautiful, lovely cousins. Beloved by esoteric practices, wormwood is an herb of spirits and visions. It's said that burning wormwood in a graveyard can summon the dead to commune, and that carrying a sachet of wormwood can protect one against bewitchment, accidents, and wandering evils. Sacred to moon goddesses Artemis and Diana, wormwood has long been a guardian herb, used to ward off harmful spirits, while paradoxically also inviting in contact with the other world. This bitter plant is an ingredient not only in absinthe, but in old charms of binding and love, too. A dual nature of bane and blessing in one silver-green leafed plant. Folklore even pairs wormwood with its cousin mugwort to empower clairvoyance and astral travel, though with one precaution. Wormwood's potency means that it must be used with care, but we'll get to that. Fennel and anise, absinthe's other defining herbs, bring their own magic into the mix. Green anise, specifically the seeds, lends that licorice sweet aroma and is known in folk magic for protection and psychic clarity. In Mediterranean traditions, anise was hung by the bed to ward off nightmares, and a pillow stuffed with anise seeds is said to keep evil at bay and ensure only peaceful dreams remain. It also carries the bright blessings of Mercury and Apollo, simulating happiness and mental insight in one's life. Very fitting for a drink that writers and poets alike sipped for inspiration. Fennel, one of my favorite flavors and herbs of all time, similarly has been a protective ally since a very, very long time ago. Fennel seeds impart strength and vitality, and people used to hang fennel bundles in windows and doorways to repel curses and evil spirits from the home. Hang it at the door, and the devil dares no more, went one old saying that I found very charming. In folklore, fennel was thought to extend one's lifespan and give courage in troubled times. Even today, a witch might add fennel to a purification spell or herbal brew to sanctify and heal. Together, as a trinity, wormwood, fennel, and anise create a powerful concoction, a blend of bitter and sweet, protection, and envisionary experiences. It's little wonder that absinthe's very botanicals have such a reputation for magic, because they've been whispering their properties to us for millennia. Long before absinthe fueled the bohemian midnight, it began humbly as medicine. Wormwood's story as a healer goes way back to some of the earliest records of herbal lore. The ancient Egyptians noted wormwood in the Ebers Papyrus, which was circa 1550 BCE, a while ago, as a remedy for various ailments. And Greek physicians like Hippocrates prescribed wormwood-infused wine to ease fevers, aid digestion, and even help with childbirth. Legend says that Artemis herself revealed wormwood's use for soothing women in labor, hence the genus name Artemisia. These early wormwood potions were bitter, yes. The Greek word absinthion literally meant undrinkable, but in my experience and in herbal medicine, some of the most powerful herbs are often the most bitter. It's in the late 18th century that wormwood's bitter power found a new form. Picture this. Switzerland, 1792. An exiled French doctor named Pierre Ordinaire riding through the Val de Travers, gathering alpine herbs. He concocts a bright green distilled tonic from wormwood, green anise, fennel, hyssop, lemon balm, and a couple other botanicals, hoping to make the old wormwood remedy more palatable. His magic potion, at 136 proof and scented of licorice and menthol, quickly earned local fame as extrait d'absinthe, a cure-all for, quote, what ails you, end quote. In truth, that will surprise probably absolutely no one. It was the Henriade sisters, two local women healers from the area, who perfected this recipe and sold it as a medicinal draft first. Either way, by the turn of the 19th century, this recipe was acquired by Major Dubied and his son-in-law, a distiller named Henri Louis Pernod, who opened the first absinthe distillery in 1797. What began as a provincial France folk remedy was about to become something else entirely. The name Pernod became synonymous with absinthe, and it still is to this day. And that brand set the standard for those enjoying this fashionable new spirit. Now, absinthe was a beverage and not just a tonic, and it took off in France. By the mid-1800s, it was aided by historical chance and perhaps a little bit of magic. In the 1850s, a blight carried something called phylloxera, which devastated French vineyards. This is a disease that affects grapes, and it crippled wine production. The people were thirsty for an alternative, so the public turned to the vibrant green spirit that was on its climb to the top. Thus, absinthe stepped into the spotlight. By 1855, French troops in North Africa were being given absinthe rations, both for its presumed health benefits, as wormwood was thought to prevent disease, and as a taste of home. So, when those soldiers returned, they brought their absinthe habit with them. Soon, the evening cocktail hour in France became known as the Green Hour. Around 5 p.m., when cafes brimmed with patrons sipping the pale green aperitif and enjoying its unique appeal, the traditional absinthe service became a daily ritual. A dose of absinthe in a glass, the slotted spoon and sugar cube perched on top, and a slow drip of ice water from a fountain that turned the liquor cloudy white as oils of anise swirled out of solution when mixed with water. This mesmerizing transformation was as much of a performance as it was a refreshment. It symbolized a day's shift into evening, the mundane into the realm of inspiration. By the Belle Epoque, which was the 1870s to the 1900s, absinthe was the reigning spirit of Paris. Some statistics put its French consumption at 36 million liters in 1910, up from just 700,000 liters in 1874. Cafes from Montmartre to the Latin Quarter were described as emerald lit at dusk, with all of the glasses of absinthe on the tables. It was inexpensive enough that the poor could partake, yet fanciful enough to charm aristocrats. Men and women alike drank absinthe, a fact that scandalized some in proper society, as spirits had been mostly a male-dominated refreshment. But absinthe, with its alluring fragrance and bohemian cachet, broke the rules. It was no longer just a medicinal tonic, it was a lifestyle. In absinthe's intoxicating glow, artists found a muse, lovers found courage, and everyday people found a brief escape into a slightly more enchanting reality. As absinthe's popularity grew, so too did the legend of La Fille Verte, the Green Fairy. This wasn't just a cute nickname for the drink's color. To many artists and poets, the Green Fairy was very real, the personification of absinthe's inspiring and sometimes maddening effects. In the late-night cafes of Paris, one might say in a hushed, playful tone, "I've met the Green Fairy tonight." To meet the Green Fairy described a moment of peculiar clarity or creative vision after a certain number of glasses. Absinthe, unlike wine or other spirits, was said to produce not a stupefying drunkenness, but a lucid, dreamlike state, a feeling that one's perception had opened a door to something extraordinary. Whether this was pharmacology or placebo hardly mattered to the poets of the age. They embraced the idea that a green, winged muse lived within their glass. The bohemian artists of the 19th century made absinthe their muse and their myth. In smoky cabarets and studios, the likes of Charles Baudelaire, Paul Verlaine, Arthur Rimbaud, Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, Vincent van Gogh, and so many others drank glass after glass, sometimes to spark creativity, and sometimes to dull their inner demons. They wrote verses and painted canvases underneath Absinthe's spell. Toulouse-Lautrec even engineered a special hollow cane to secretly carry Absinthe with him, ensuring that he was never without his cherished muse. The Green Fairy herself became a character in art and literature. In one famous painting, The Green Muse of 1895 by Albert Mignon, a translucent emerald fairy is shown whispering to a poet who gazes at her in rapturous despair, a visualization of Absinthe's creative seduction. In another artwork by Victor Oliva, a solitary absinthe drinker stares into space while a naked female fairy, tinted green, perches on his table. She is the embodiment of the voluptuous yet ruinous muse that he alone can see. I have had the opportunity to see some of the art from this time depicting the infamous Green Fairy, and it was quite the experience. I grew up adoring Moulin Rouge and the scenes where they drink absinthe and go on a bohemian adventure before writing their supposed masterpiece both intrigued and enchanted me. As a young girl, I wanted to know more. Who was she, this Green Fairy, and why was she? And thus began one of my journeys into what makes a muse, a journey I am admittedly still on today and may always be. But regardless, I met that first muse many years ago, a few years before I was actually allowed to partake. And I was in an antique mall, and it was a massive one, full of corridors stuffed to the brim with true treasures. My friends and I would often go and spend hours there, just like I was on this day, and I like to go and touch these pieces of the past and wonder who had wondered at them before me, until finally, after a long time, I made it to the very, very back of this warehouse. And there, in the corner of this wonderland, were 4 massive advertisements for the Green Fairy herself. One for Pernod's Absinthe, a simple painted bottle with a wispy green figure swirling in the contents within. The next held a Green Fairy poised on top of an absinthe spoon, looking far too coy to be placed among the dust in the rafters. The others held a man, leaned intensely against a table, nearly toppling over, listening with rapt intent at the sensuous green muse that occupied the small cafe table's second seat. And last was just an absinthe spoon. From behind the spoon, 2 beautiful green eyes emerged from the darkness, calling me through the slots in the spoon. But these pieces of art, they were more than advertisements. They felt like spells, talismans with palpable magic. I couldn't look away. And they still stick with me to this very day, and of course they did, because besides my curiosity, these were massive pieces of art. Paintings on huge sheets of metal, 19 feet tall by 6 feet wide, and a marvel to behold. I couldn't forget them if I tried. Though at that point in time I did already love Moulin Rouge, if La Fille Verte hadn't had me yet, she certainly had me then. Such is the magic of the Green Fairy. You see her and you're drawn in, whether that's in a drink, in a piece of art, or in her now infamous stories. Writers described Absinthe's effects in supernatural terms. The poet Oscar Wilde, you might recognize that name, was an absinthe devotee, and he recounted that, quote, "After the first glass, you see things as you wish they were. After the second, you see things as they are not. And finally, after the third, you see things as they really are. And that is the most horrible thing in the world." End quote. Dramatic, but by that final stage, Wilde said that one perceives reality as dissociated, stripped of comforting illusions, which is precisely why he believed that absinthe could drive men mad. Wilde also described how after drinking absinthe for days on end, he hallucinated brilliant flowers blossoming on the floor of his cafe. His waiter, alas, saw nothing. Such phantasmagorias became part of absinthe's mystique. Was this drink truly hallucinogenic? Or did the poets simply have wonderful, wild, active imaginations? It hardly mattered. The Green Fairy had captured the collective imagination. Even the notorious but incredibly problematic occultist, Aleister Crowley, sang absinthe's praises. Crowley called absinthe the green goddess, penning an essay in 1918 that extolled its inspirational virtues and mystical character. He regarded absinthe's experience as almost religious, a sacrament for free spirits. Crowley and others noted that absinthe's intoxication felt unique, a blend of euphoria, sharpened senses, and gentle hallucinations, unlike the muddy drunkenness of wine. Some absinthe cocktails were named with a nod to its artistry and effect on the mind. For instance, Death in the Afternoon, a mix of absinthe and champagne coined by Ernest Hemingway, another famous absinthier, and alluding to the very act of drinking absinthe being able to be seen as some kind of ritual of creativity and dipping a toe into engaging with the potential madness that can come when inspiration hits. Perhaps, at this point, as much as you're picking up on the Green Fairy's allure, you might also now be aware that she comes with a warning, that the Green Fairy is a muse with a razor's edge. The fairy might inspire you, yes, but she could also lead you into madness. Van Gogh's turbulent psyche and the story of him slicing off his ear has often, and perhaps unfairly, been linked to his prodigious absinthe consumption. The poet Verlaine, in the thrall of absinthe and other spirits, sank into ruin and even violence. Absinthe was blamed for driving men insane, for spurning geniuses into self-destruction. The Green Fairy, it was said, could turn into a wicked enchantress if you trusted her too much. This duality of absinthe, creative angel versus destructive demon, set the stage for the moral panic to come. Absinthe's heyday came crashing down in the early 20th century amid a storm of fear and propaganda. As the temperance movement gained momentum, absinthe was singled out as public enemy number one, a, quote, devil in a green bottle, end quote, corrupting society. In the newspapers, doctors and moralists ranted on about absinthium, a supposed syndrome of madness, epilepsy, and degeneration caused by absinthe. They claimed that absinthe drinkers experienced horrifying hallucinations, became violently insane, and wasted away. Never mind that many heavy absinthe drinkers were also just heavy drinkers of all sorts of alcohol, and that some cheap absinthes were contaminated with real poisons. To a public already uneasy about urban bohemian lifestyles, the idea of a drink that could drive you insane or make you see things was terrifying. Politicians and the media fanned the flames of a Green Fairy panic. One incident in particular became the flashpoint. In 1905, the case of Jean Lefray, a Swiss farmer who murdered his wife and children after an extended day of drinking, made headlines. He had consumed enormous quantities of wine and brandy that day, but he had also had 2 glasses of absinthe. The press seized on the absinthe and downplayed the rest, somehow, with headlines like, "Absinthe drinker murders family." Lenfrey's rampage was held up as proof that absinthe made men maniacs. Switzerland reacted by banning absinthe in 1910, and not to be outdone, Belgium and France soon marshaled their own bans. The powerful French wine lobby had long hated absinthe for cutting into their profits, so they eagerly supported prohibition, portraying absinthe as a toxic scourge while conveniently ignoring that wine caused far more overall drunkenness. A 1915 French poster titled La Mort de la Fille Verte, The Death of the Green Fairy, even depicted the Green Fairy herself being led to the stake and burned like a witch, symbolizing the eradication of absinthe from France. By 1915, absinthe was banned in France, the United States, and most of Europe. Only a few places, like Spain and the UK, escaped total prohibition. Britain never officially banned it, but it did fall out of fashion. The Green Fairy had been cast out and vilified as thoroughly as any demon of old. Central to the anti-absinthe crusade was the ingredient thujone, a chemical component of wormwood. Thujone, in high doses, is a convulsant, and it was blamed for absinthe's alleged hallucinogenic effects. Absinthe detractors, armed with only rudimentary science, insisted that thujone caused brain damage and absinthe madness. However, modern analyses have revealed a twist. Classic absinthe never contained thujone in high concentrations. One would die of alcohol poisoning long before the thujone could have any toxic effect. The notorious hallucinations were likely exaggerated or caused by other additives. In the late 19th century, some low-quality absinthe makers adulterated their products with copper sulfates to enhance the green color, or even added coal tar dyes or antimony, which are toxic and sometimes deadly. Additionally, drinkers might lace their absinthe with opium in the form of laudanum, or mix it with other drugs, creating a far more hallucinatory cocktail than absinthe alone. The truth was that the extremely high alcohol content of absinthe, usually 50 to 72% ABV, or about 120 to 144 proof, was the primary source of its peril. As one contemporary expert wryly noted, quote, "No one ever went mad on absinthe who didn't start out with a serious case of alcoholism," end quote. In other words, absinthe's victims were more truthfully victims of their own overindulgence. But such nuances were lost in the furor. By the 1910s, absinthe had become a symbol of moral decay and blamed for everything from family violence to the decline of France itself. Conservative society heaped upon it all of their anxieties about the era: women drinking in public, bohemian sensuality, mental illness, and the loosening grip of tradition and empire. The Green Fairy took the fall for all of the excesses of the Belle Epoque, and she was exiled for it, her wings clipped by the legislation and public scorn of the time. For almost a century, absinthe remained a forbidden, faintly legendary thing. The myth and legends only grew. Whispered rumors of clandestine distillers, expat artists in Spain still chasing the Green Fairy, and the enduring mystique of those Belle Epoque poems and paintings. Unsurprisingly, banning absinthe only enshrined its legacy as the forbidden muse, the lost spirit of a more romantic age. Absinthe was a lovely concoction of many powerful plant allies, and everybody made theirs just a bit differently. But if any plant was ever touched by myth and legacy, it is wormwood. I always end up somehow coming back to wormwood in my practice. Independently of absinthe and its rise and fall, wormwood has a rich folkloric history across cultures, often walking the line between sacred and cursed. The very name wormwood appears in the Bible as a symbol of bitterness and sorrow in the book of Revelations, where a star named Wormwood falls from the sky, turning waters bitter and poisonous. This biblical imagery made wormwood a metaphor for tragic affliction. Yet in other contexts, wormwood was revered and protective. Ancient Greeks and Romans knew wormwood well. They called it Absinthion, and as mentioned earlier, physicians like Hippocrates used it medicinally. In Greek lore, wormwood was tied to Artemis, goddess of the moon and the hunt. One legend says that Artemis, or her Roman counterpart Diana, gifted wormwood to humanity as a medicinal herb for women, easing childbirth pains and repelling harmful energies. And thus, Artemisia, the genus name of wormwood, honors both Artemis and Diana. Wormwood was considered to be sacred to her, a moon-cool herb with the powers to ward off wild beasts and evil spirits underneath the moonlight. Wormwood was also linked to Pan, the god of wild spaces, suggesting its dualistic nature, one of protection in civilized use and untamed visionary experiences in excess or private. Or, if, like me, you're wild at heart, wormwood could stir within you a call into the shadows and all of the wicked, lovely things that happen within them. And if so, perhaps like me, you could start to see how wormwood spirit is a wild spirit in her own right, with lessons and stories to share to those who know where to look, those who seek visions, ecstatic and transcendental moments of inspiration and presence can work with wormwood as a muse, a guide, an ally, and a teacher, one to be honored and never tamed, lest you end up caught in the madness that so many faced when they paid a visit to La Fille Verte. Wormwood demands respect, and the Celts understood this deeply. To the Druids, wormwood was counted among one of the most potent herbs. An old Celtic practice held that to gather wormwood most efficaciously, one could do so at dawn while walking backwards to confuse any lurking spirits that might follow this powerful herb home. Living up to its protective reputation, one quaint bit of Celtic folklore claims that under a wormwood plant's roots lives a magical coal, like one from a fire, that can protect against lightning and demons. So treasured was wormwood's protective power that St. John the Baptist was said to wear a girdle of wormwood in the wilderness to keep the devil at bay, a Christian adoption of older pagan wisdom, albeit a little strange. Speaking of Christian lore, one legend from the Middle Ages gives wormwood a bittersweet origin, saying that when the devil was expelled from Eden, as the story goes, the first plant to sprout from his footsteps was wormwood. As such, it carried the infernal bitterness of the fall. Yet, God allowed it to grow to help mankind by countering poison and being a herb of purification. In a related tale, wormwood sprang up along the path that the serpent took out of paradise to prevent it from ever returning. Again, we see its dualistic nature. Is it evil springing up from the devil's footprints, or is it of God and protecting Eden from the serpent ever returning. Who knows? I always say that we love a well-rounded ally, so it could be both. Another lesson of Artemisia is don't limit yourself. Either way, because of this reputation, medieval Europeans called wormwood the pilgrim's herb. Travelers would tuck a few wormwood leaves or sprigs into their shoes and believed that it would prevent weariness and keep evil spirits or dangerous animals away from them on the road. This practice of placing wormwood on doorways, in shoes, or in your cart or vehicle of travel also arose. Carriage drivers would paint a bit of wormwood on their wagons or hang it from their horses' bridles to avert accidents and bewitchment. Because of this, wormwood became synonymous with safe passage, both physical and spiritual. Also because of its function as the pilgrim's herb, the pilgrims carrying this beloved plant helped it to nearly go global. So naturally, it made its way into Slavic folklore as well. In many Slavic languages, wormwood is known as Chernobylik, and I probably killed that, but Chernobylik. And if it sounds familiar, it's because, notably, Chernobyl is named after wild mugwort, wormwood's cousin. The Slavs of older times, and perhaps now, believed that wormwood was one of the most powerful allies against evil. Its bitter aroma was said to be unbearable to malicious entities. For example, in the Ukraine and Russia, people wove wreaths of wormwood and hung them on doors and windows during certain festival days and nights, like Kupala, which is the summer solstice celebration, specifically to ward off evil fairy creatures or rusalki, which are malevolent water spirits that are prevalent in the mythology and folklore of the area, and any other wandering demons. So you see, a traveler in these lands might also carry wormwood in a sachet to ensure safe travels and keep evil at a distance. It's an interesting through line from various regions that we as modern practitioners can absolutely work with today. But the Slavic world goes just a step beyond, and they believed that a person with envy or hate in their hearts visiting your home would cause that energy to linger in your home after they'd gone. So, burning dried wormwood after they left would fumigate the space of any lingering bad energy or spirits that they might have attracted with their negative emotions or left behind. Wormwood smoke was essentially spiritual pest control, and the belief was very straightforward. No foul thing could tolerate wormwood's stench. Because of this, it was even used in burial rites. Wormwood would be placed in coffins or burned in ceremonies to help guide the departed souls and repel any evil that might try to interfere. To the Slavs, wormwood was bitter in taste, but a sweet guardian in effect. In the British Isles, people brewed wormwood ale before hops, with some claiming that it had the ability to ward off witchcraft or enchantments for those who drank it. Ironically, witches themselves used wormwood in potions and spell work. Most notably, there is an old recipe for flying ointment that includes wormwood, likely for its believed mind-altering thujone content. For those who don't know, witches' flying ointments are old-world magic, balms or ointments used to induce trance-like states. In Appalachia and American folk magic, wormwood was used in infusions to wash floors or thresholds and keep evil away, blending these old-world traditions with new-world sensibilities and also science. Because often the folklore lines up with real science, and oh, how I love it when it is so. You see, they were really onto something with this protect and banish vibe with wormwood because it doesn't just do that spiritually, it really does that physically. There's growing research that suggests that the thujone content of wormwood is a good aid to rid the body of parasites. And now, this is a part where I need to tell you, this is an entertainment podcast only, and I am not a doctor. Now that that's over, yes, this plant is a popular naturopathic remedy for parasite cleanses in the body. Outside of the body, however, wormwood also shines and can act as an insect repellent. When planted in the garden, it can keep the bugs that damage winter crops away. An essential ally back when you needed those winter crops to succeed. But beyond that, it is an excellent repellent for flies, mosquitoes, fleas, moths, and ants, none of which you want in your home, especially back when homes had earthen floors and you would lay straw or hay down with other plants like wormwood to repel those kinds of bugs out of your house. They also used junipers and rosemary and all kinds of other very potent smelling herbs to really drive out those pests that could shatter your peace of mind if they get into your home. So, wormwood as a floor and threshold wash was a double whammy. Linguistically, wormwood is also very interesting. The Old English word wormod might derive from warmod, meaning mind preserver, implying that it was used to clear the mind, or potentially from the roots vermi and wad, so worm, vermi, and wad wood, because it was believed to expel intestinal worms then and now. But whatever the origin, in literature, wormwood invariably meant something kind of harsh. Shakespeare's Juliet, from Romeo and Juliet, you might have heard of that, remarks, "Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds," and then recalls how as a child, she tasted wormwood on a nurse's breast, a memory of bitterness. And from that moment in Shakespeare, something iconic was born, and the term wormwood and gall became proverbial for life's bitterness and dealing with the hand you are dealt. You may have picked up by now that in the cauldron of folklore, bitter things are often transmuted into protection or strength. That which tastes foul to humans was often believed to taste foul to evil spirits too. Thus, wormwood's shadow is also its blessing. Absinthe, being essentially distilled wormwood, inherited this dichotomy. So it's little wonder that the green fairy was painted as both angel and demon. Wormwood's nature flows in her very veins. And the wheel turns as the wheel tends to do, and absinthe found revival in the 21st century. The green fairy had tiptoed back into the circle of modern magic, with today's witches and occultists approaching absinthe with respect, aware of its storied past and potent energy. And with that, the question arises, how can one work with absinthe or wormwood safely and meaningfully? Well, first, let's clarify. Absinthe does contain the spirit of wormwood, but in a much gentler concentration than legend suggests. Modern absinthes are regulated, and they only have very trace amounts of thujone, the compound that causes us any trouble at all. And scientists now affirm that absinthe is no more hallucinogenic or toxic than any strong liquor. So you can use it in moderation and be completely safe and unafraid as long as you are using it the way that you should use it, which is like any other alcoholic beverage. So now the bans on absinthe have lifted, and absinthe is considered as safe as whiskey or gin these days. This means that practitioners can legally obtain real absinthe in most countries and explore its uses without fear of breaking the law or your mind. That said, caution and respect are key watchwords here. Absinthe is very, very high proof alcohol, and wormwood's energy is, well, witchy, and not to be toyed with recklessly. It wasn't just the Celts, the Romans, the Slavs, and other pilgrims that believed wormwood to be one of the strongest, most potent herbal allies. I, too, believe that wormwood is one of the strongest green allies you could work with in a magical practice, regardless of what you're doing. In a magical practice, absinthe can serve as a unique tool for those drawn to it. Many witches use it as a sort of ritual elixir. One small sip of absinthe at the start of a ceremony or spell to open the sight and honor the liminal spirit of creativity. Just as one might drink wine in a Dionysian rite or ale in an autumn harvest rite, a bit of absinthe can be consecrated and imbibed to invite in the green fairy's inspiration. The key is small doses. Enough to feel the loosening warmth and shift in consciousness, but not so much as to become inebriated. I know, personally, that some tarot readers, especially in certain places, cities, or circles, have been known to take a single diluted absinthe drink before a session, as they claim it attunes their mind to the symbols and messages just a little bit more freely. The lucid yet dreamy buzz of absinthe, when controlled, can indeed facilitate a light trance ideal for divination. One witch described it as feeling like, quote, stepping half a dimension to the left, where everything is nearly the same, but the veil is thinner, end quote. And I agree. When used this way, with respect and honor, and in conscious co-creation, maybe a little reverence, absinthe becomes a gateway potion for visionary experiences. But for those rightly wary of drinking, wormwood itself offers alternatives. Dried wormwood can be burned as incense or fumigant to cleanse and evoke spirits. This hails back to the old practices of burning wormwood for protection and spirit communication. In a modern ritual, one might burn a pinch of wormwood on a charcoal in a well-ventilated space because its smoke can be quite pungent and slightly acrid, so a little goes a long way, and use the aromatic smoke to purify the ritual space and shift consciousness. Many report that wormwood, as incense, produces a subtle floating sensation or a deepening of intuition. It's especially popular with magical folk around Samhain or Halloween. Burning wormwood to call to ancestral spirits or aid in meditation could be beneficial around this time, as legend says that it helps summon departed souls. In fact, a popular craft for Samhain is to make wormwood bundles and use the smoke to bless graves or scrying mirrors, because as we know, wormwood's correspondence aligns with both protection and psychic opening, providing a very rare balance. It's like a guardian at the gates of the spiritual realm. It wards off malevolence while also letting you in to have genuine visionary experiences. Apart from imbibing, absinthe can also be a magical offering. Pagans who work with the fae or nature spirits sometimes pour a small glass of absinthe and leave it on an outdoor altar as an offering to the green fairy herself, or just to the good folk in general. The bright herbal smell is said to attract friendly spirits, perhaps with the aroma reminding them of wild herbs, just like it does me. Devotees of Artemis or Diana might similarly offer absinthe or wormwood on their altars, given the plant's sacred associations with those deities. One could even incorporate absinthe into the cup for a cakes and ale style Wiccan ritual, substituting the ale for a diluted and sweetened absinthe, either the liquor or the tea, creating a potent symbolic drink. Wormwood, in its own right, has a long history, both magic and mundane, but modern witches have found very practical uses as well. Wormwood is noted in herbal grimoires of the modern era for banishing work to dispel unwanted influences or break curses. A contemporary spell might have you sprinkle wormwood around your property or add it to a banishing poppet. Absinthe, as a liquid, can be used to anoint candles for psychic visions or artistic inspiration spells. For example, before writing poetry or music, a witch might dress a green or purple candle with a few drops of absinthe. Safely, though, as it is alcoholic and flammable, and you must never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, pour it over a lit candle. Please practice fire safety when doing your magic. You can also anoint tools, spaces, yourself, just like you would with Florida water or any other magical oil or liquid. Just be careful. You might not want to fling it all over unless you're a goblin like I am. But back to a candle anointed with absinthe or wormwood somehow, if it could be a wormwood infused oil. As the candle burns, a witch might sip absinthe and let the creative energies flow. You could invite the green fairy to join you, both literally with the drink and the candle, and spiritually by imbibing with the drink or holding it or having it on your altar and then engaging in some kind of creative activity. Any way of engaging with wormwood or absinthe is both psychological and spiritual. A little ritual to signal to the mind that we're entering the creative flow state, aided by wormwood's long-standing reputation and magic. For those who don't drink, simply holding the bottle will do. You have many other senses in which to drink the potent energy of a magic potion. Never forget that the human experience is inherently spiritual and sensual. What color is the absinthe? How does it smell? What does it look like? What does the art on the bottle make you feel? What do you notice? If you're working with the herb, what does the herb look like? What does it sound like when you rub it in your hands? What does it smell like when you waft it underneath your nose? What does it feel like if you rub a little on your arm? Using your senses to inspire and conjure the energy means that you don't have to consume it internally to engage with its magic. With whatever way you choose to engage, safety does remain paramount. Wise witches remember that, like many beloved plants, wormwood is poisonous in large amounts. So one should never drink undistilled wormwood oil or tincture or over-ingest the herb. The beauty of absinthe sold as is from the store is that it's already balanced and measured for you. And the bitterness of it actually prevents most people from overdoing it, both now and back then. It's a self-limiting magic potion. You likely won't chug absinthe in the way some might chug rum or some other drink that they enjoy. Still, moderation is the mantra. Start with small quantities, whether drinking or burning or touching or looking. When you are engaging with any new spirit or magical thing, I suggest observing and engaging until you understand how its energy plays with yours first before diving all the way in. And this is no different. Approach the green fairy with a clear intention and grounded spirit when you do. In a magical practice, you might have heard that intent is everything. That's just the tip of the iceberg, but if you treat absinthe as a sacred tool rather than a party drink, you create a container not only for the desired energies to come through, but you're also creating a simple ritual around it. For instance, lighting a candle like I mentioned before, speaking an invocation or prayer to the spirit of wormwood to guide you and guard you, and then taking your sip or lighting your incense frames it in sacredness. And you mitigate random, unwanted influences and experiences by rooting yourself in that sacred space, in what is now a time-honored ritual of engaging with this plant, be it through absinthe or tea or oil or tincture or whatever else it may be. Many practitioners, myself included, say that when used in this respectful, ceremonial way, absinthe gives a gentle lift to meditation or creative work. A very, very far cry from the uncontrolled binges of the Belle Epoque. It becomes, when we engage with absinthe in this way, it becomes a partner, not a peril. In short, modern witchcraft has rehabilitated absinthe to its more holistic origins, an herbal ally with both protective and inspirative qualities. We remember that even when it was the drink of debauchery, it was also the drink that accompanied art, resistance, and the bohemian lifestyle of subverting the status quo. What a muse to evoke in your life, let alone in a magical practice. We also remember that before its demonization, it was a healer's potion and a pilgrim's charm, a muse of practicality. Like most of my favorite tricksters, today's green fairy is quieter and in the shadows, but no less potent. She's more likely to be invited into a poetry writing session or a divination circle than a rowdy tavern these days, though she certainly still loves her taverns. And if you're in New Orleans, you might get all of those things in one night. But, again, you don't have to drink or engage with this muse by drinking. Absinthe is a muse all in her own right. Wormwood is a muse all in her own right. An inspirational green spirit you can evoke, invoke, and invite out to play. I personally do not drink anymore, but I still engage with her, my beloved green fairy. I love the visions of velvet, bohemian renaissance, art, French cafes, light, and even madness that she inspires within me. I feel more expansive just thinking of her, and that is her magic. That's what the green fairy brings me when she visits. I don't even need a physical link at this point in our relationship, but for those who don't drink like me, but the idea of a ritual drink makes you happy, in recent years, we have had many tea houses develop absinthe herbal teas, alcohol-free brews that simulate absinthe's flavor using wormwood, anise, fennel, and other herbs, but without the alcohol. These can be used by those who cannot or don't want to drink alcohol, but still wish to work with wormwood and absinthe's magical aspects. Such teas, when brewed, usually lightly because wormwood can be very bitter, can serve in ritual just as the liquor would, and perhaps sipped just like we would regular absinthe before a visionary journey, a meditation, or used to asperge an idea for purification, inspiration, creativity, joy, you name it, whatever you want, it's there. Whether through the genuine spirit or pure herb, the green fairy's essence endures in magic. And perhaps to your surprise, in my own personal opinion, her ultimate magic doesn't lie in protection or banishment. I believe ultimately that wormwood is an herb of transformation, bitter but illuminating. Every witch who works with her writes a new chapter in their story with each session, one that is gently held by the wisdom gleaned from the triumphs and mistakes of those bohemian absinteurs of old. As our journey with the Green Fairy comes to a close, take a moment to savor the atmosphere we've conjured together. The poetic past and practical magic swirling together like absinthe in a glass. Absinthe is truly a spirit of paradox, a healer and a trickster, a muse and a menace, depending on how she's approached. These days, I like to think of myself in a similar fashion. In reclaiming absinthe's folkloric and magical history, we also reclaim a piece of our own creative freedom. The permission to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be when imagination and intuition are given a seat at the table. If this episode has sparked your curiosity, I invite you to join me beyond the podcast for a deeper dive into the Green Fairy. Over on Patreon, I've prepared a special bonus meditation for you where you can commune with the Green Fairy and gain creative inspiration. No drink necessary. We'll journey into the vision through a moonlit absinthe bar on the astral plane where the Green Fairy will meet us and offer her guidance and her mischief. It's a safe and enchanting visualization designed to unlock your creativity and connect you with that flow of ideas. Again, no drinking required, just an open mind and heart. You'll also find some more ideas of how to invite the Green Fairy into your magical practice, how to perform your own absinthe ritual, making a ritual out of the preparation of the drink, some drink recipe alternatives, and some no drink required absinthe magic, all in a printable grimoire page that you can have on your phone, tablet, laptop, or print off to put in your own grimoire or book of shadows. All of that is on my Patreon for just $1. If you'd like to go meet the Green Fairy with me and experience that and support the show at the same time, head over to my Patreon page and you'll find the Green Fairy waiting there for you. Thank you so much for sharing this enchanting time with me. Until next time, please stay inspired and stay magical. And perhaps one evening, as you're watching a candle flame dance, you'll remember the Green Fairy and smile, knowing now just a little bit more of her mysteries. My name is Wishamaya. Don't forget to keep your roots deep and your dreams wild.